Press the button again, Beatrice. I know the bitter bitch is in there. That was the first thing I heard through my security intercom on a Tuesday morning. Not a greeting, not an apology, just my sister's shrill, impatient voice cutting through the speaker of my gate station, followed immediately by my mother's heavy sigh. I looked at the high-definition monitor mounted on my kitchen wall. Standing on the gravel driveway outside my 12-foot steel security gate was Beatrice Vance, my mother, wrapping a faded wool shawl tightly around her shoulders. Next to her stood my twin sister Clara, her face twisted in that familiar, ugly scowl she always wore when the world didn't bend to her whim. Behind them, idling loudly and blocking half the two-lane country road, was an orange rented moving truck. Through the dirty windshield of the truck, I could see Clara's husband, Todd, tapping his fingers impatiently on the steering wheel, while 3 young children wrestled in the cramped cabin behind him. They had taped boxes stacked to the ceiling in the back of that truck, and they had arrived with the absolute certainty that my home was their destination. 14 years ago, these exact same people had watched me walk down their driveway in a freezing November sleet storm, carrying my entire life in 2 black plastic garbage bags. Back then, Beatrice had locked the door behind me and told me that a little struggle would finally teach me how to respect family. Now, because I owned a 6-acre commercial property, a custom steel fabrication business, and a renovated farmhouse with a guest wing, they called themselves my family again. Clara stepped closer to the intercom panel, her acrylic nail tapping viciously against the metal casing. "Morgan, open this damn gate." "We've been driving for 4 hours. The kids are starving, and Todd needs to park the truck before we get a ticket." I leaned against my kitchen counter, took a slow sip of my black coffee, and spoke into the microphone. "Who is this?" A heavy silence fell over the gate camera. Clara's jaw dropped. Beatrice stepped forward, pushing Clara aside, her eyes wide with manufactured hurt as she looked directly into the lens. "Morgan, please don't do this," my mother pleaded, her voice trembling with that practiced, fragile cadence she used whenever she wanted to play the victim. "We are exhausted. We had to leave the apartment in Columbus. The landlord was a monster, and your sister has nowhere else to go. We are family, Morgan. Let us in, and we can talk like adults." "You have 10 seconds to get that truck off my driveway before I call the county sheriff to have it towed for obstructing a commercial entrance," I said, my voice deadpan, completely devoid of the anger they expected. "Morgan Vance," Beatrice snapped, her fragile act vanishing in an instant, replaced by the cold, commanding tone of the woman who had spent 18 years making sure I knew I was the second-rate daughter. "You will not embarrass me in front of your sister's children. Open this gate right now." I didn't answer. I turned off the intercom monitor, walked back to my kitchen table, and sat down. My heart was pounding, but not with fear. For the first time in my 32 years of life, the barrier between me and their poison was made of solid, industrial-grade steel that I had welded with my own hands. To understand why that gate stayed locked, and why I felt absolutely zero guilt watching my mother cry on a security monitor, you have to understand how we got here. In Beatrice's carefully constructed narrative, she was a heroic single mother who had sacrificed everything to raise twin girls after our father walked out when we were 6. She repeated that sentence to neighbors, to teachers, to church members, and to anyone who would listen. But inside the walls of our rented 3-bedroom ranch house in rural Ohio, the reality was entirely different. There was Clara, and then there was the shadow Clara cast. We were identical twins, but Beatrice treated those 7 minutes of Clara's seniority like a royal decree. Clara got the bedroom with the walk-in closet. I got the tiny, drafty box room next to the furnace that smelled of rust and old dust. Clara got brand new clothes for school. I got her stained hand-me-downs, with Beatrice telling me that I was too practical to care about fashion anyway. When Clara wanted to join the cheerleading squad, Beatrice emptied our meager savings to pay for her uniforms and travel fees. When I asked to join the school's welding and vocational arts club, Beatrice laughed and told me that girls didn't belong in dirty workshops, suggesting I take up library volunteering instead because it was free. I didn't mind the library, honestly. It kept me out of the house. But the emotional hierarchy was impossible to escape. On our birthdays, Clara got to choose the cake, the theme, and the presents, while I was handed a single card and told to be grateful that we were celebrating at all. If I ever complained, Beatrice would pull me aside, her grip on my shoulder tight enough to leave a dull ache, and whisper, "Your sister is sensitive, Morgan. She needs extra support. You are strong. You don't need me to hold your hand. It was a brilliant piece of psychological manipulation. By calling me strong and independent, Beatrice converted her neglect into a compliment. She made me feel like my silence was a badge of honor, while Clara's constant demands were treated as a fragile medical condition that required our entire household to tiptoe around her. The only person who saw through the theater was my maternal grandfather, Arthur Morris. He was a retired structural boilermaker who lived in a small, cluttered house filled with blueprints, antique ironwork, and the heavy scent of pipe tobacco. He was a quiet man with calloused hands and gray eyes that could read a person's character in 5 seconds. On weekends, when the tension in our house became too thick to breathe, I would walk 3 miles to his place. He never asked me why I was there. He would just hand me a wire brush, point to an old piece of ornamental iron he'd salvaged from a demolition site, and say, "Clean the scale off that, Morgan. Let's see what's underneath the rust." Grandfather Arthur taught me how to respect materials. He taught me that steel didn't lie. If you weld a joint poorly, it breaks under pressure. If you prep the metal correctly, it will hold a bridge together for 100 years. He noticed when Clara borrowed my hard-earned babysitting money and Beatrice told me to let it go because Clara needed a dress for the dance. He noticed when I graduated near the top of my class with a vocational certification in drafting and Beatrice didn't even bother to take a photo because Clara had just broken up with her high school boyfriend and was too depressed to attend the ceremony. During my senior year, Grandfather Arthur's lungs began to fail him. He had spent 40 years breathing in coal dust and welding fumes, and the bill had finally come due. I spent every afternoon of his last months sitting by his hospice bed, listening to the wheeze of his oxygen machine. Beatrice and Clara rarely showed up, claiming the hospital smell made them anxious. A week before he passed, Grandfather Arthur called me close. His hand was weak, but his grip was steady. He reached under his pillow and pulled out a small, heavy steel cash box. "Don't show your mother this," he whispered, his voice like dry autumn leaves. "There is $450 in here. It's not a fortune, Morgan, but it's a key. When the time comes, you use it to unlock your own door. Don't let them make you feel small for wanting a life of your own." He died 3 days later. At the funeral, Clara wept loudly into a silk handkerchief, draped over Beatrice's shoulder like a tragic heroine. Beatrice comforted her, telling the mourners how deeply her sensitive Clara was grieving. I stood slightly behind them, my eyes dry, my hands shoved deep into the pockets of my cheap coat, feeling an icy wall rising up inside my chest. I wasn't crying because my grief was too heavy for theater. I was mourning the only person who had ever looked at me and seen a human being worth protecting. The real nightmare began 2 months after graduation. I was working 12-hour shifts, split between a local radiator repair shop in the mornings and cleaning offices at night, saving every penny of my grandfather's cash and my wages to pay for a deposit on a tiny studio apartment in the neighboring county. Then, Clara came home crying. She was 19, and she had managed to get herself pregnant by Todd Miller, a 21-year-old high school dropout who drove a loud, rusted pickup truck and had already been fired from 3 different gas stations for stealing cigarettes. Beatrice didn't panic. Instead, she treated the pregnancy like a miracle. Within a week, Todd had moved into our rented house, bringing with him 3 cases of cheap beer, a massive gaming console, and the arrogant attitude of a king occupying a conquered territory. Our house had 3 bedrooms. One was Beatrice's, one was mine, one was Clara's. On a cold Thursday evening in November, I came home from the radiator shop, my face covered in soot and my hands smelling of brass flux, to find my clothes packed into 2 black garbage bags sitting on the front porch. I walked inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. Beatrice, Clara, and Todd were sitting at the dining room table eating takeout Chinese food. The baby crib, still in its cardboard box, was leaning against the hallway wall. "What is this?" I asked, pointing toward the porch. Beatrice didn't even look up from her egg roll. "Your sister needs your room for the nursery, Morgan. Todd is going to be a father, and he needs space to set up his computer so he can look for a stable job. We have to make sacrifices for the baby." "My room?" My voice cracked. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" "You're 18, Morgan," Clara said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "You're so independent anyway. You've got those 2 jobs. Surely you can find a roommate or something. We need this space for my child." "I have saved $400, I said, looking at my mother. "I can't get an apartment with that. I need 6 weeks. Just let me sleep on the living room couch until the end of December." Todd snorted, chewing loudly. Yeah, that's not going to work. I get up in the middle of the night to play my games and clear my head. I don't need you staring at me from the sofa. Besides, it's bad for the baby's energy to have someone so negative in the common space. I looked at Beatrice. Mom, please, it's freezing outside. Beatrice finally looked at me, her eyes cold, flat, and completely devoid of maternal instinct. Morgan, stop being so dramatic. You always make everything about you. Your sister is starting a family. You are just being selfish. I have supported you for 18 years and I am tired. It's time for you to fly on your own. You are throwing me out, I whispered. We are giving you a push, Beatrice corrected me, turning back to her food. Now please, take your bags. We don't need a scene. The neighbors are already gossiping about Todd's truck. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. The wall that Grandfather Arthur had helped me build inside myself finally clicked into place. I walked out to the porch, picked up my 2 garbage bags, and walked down the driveway into the freezing rain. For the first 4 days, I slept in my grandfather's old, rusted station wagon, which he had left parked behind an abandoned grain silo on a patch of overgrown gravel. The engine didn't run, and the heater was dead. I wrapped myself in 3 cheap blankets I had bought at a thrift store, sleeping with my boots on because my toes felt like blocks of ice by midnight. I washed my face and brushed my teeth in the public restroom of an all-night truck stop off Route 71. I ate cheap peanut butter out of the jar with a plastic spoon. The turning point of my life came on the 5th night. A massive ice storm rolled through central Ohio, dropping the temperature into the single digits. The cold inside the station wagon was absolute. My breath turned to thick frost on the inside of the windshield. I was shivering so violently that my muscles screamed with pain. I held my grandfather's steel cash box against my chest like a shield. I realized then that if I died in that car, Beatrice would probably use my funeral to get sympathy donations from her church. She would tell everyone how much she loved her tragic, independent daughter. That thought made me furious. And fury, I discovered, is much warmer than hope. The next morning, I walked 2 miles through the slush to an old, soot-stained brick building near the railway tracks. The sign above the rusted steel door read, Burke Structural Steel and Custom Fabrication. I walked inside. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, hot iron, and cutting oil. A massive overhead crane was humming, and a man with white hair, a leather apron, and a face like a carved piece of granite was using a massive oxyacetylene torch to cut through a thick steel plate. That was Gideon Burke. He was 62 years old, a legendary metal fabricator in the county, and a man who was rumored to have fired 3 apprentices in a single week because they couldn't read a micrometer correctly. When he shut off the torch, he looked at me, his eyes narrowing through his safety glasses. We don't take walk-ins for scrap metal, kid. I don't have scrap, I said, my voice hoarse from the cold. I want a job. I can weld basic joints, I can read blueprints, and I don't complain about the cold. Gideon looked at my blue, shivering hands, then at my worn-out work boots. You look like you're about to fall over, girl. I'm not, I said. Give me a grinder. Let me clean the slag off those beams. If I do a bad job, you can throw me out, but you won't. He stared at me for a long, agonizing 10 seconds. Then, he pointed to a massive stack of structural I-beams in the corner of the shop. Grinder is on the bench. Safety glasses are in the bin. If you nick the steel, you're done. I worked for 9 hours straight. My arms burned, my back felt like it was being poked with hot needles, and my ears vibrated from the scream of the grinding wheel. But I didn't stop. I cleaned every single beam until the steel gleamed like silver. When the whistle blew at 5 o'clock, Gideon walked over, inspected the work with his thumb, and looked at me. Who taught you to prep a surface like this? My grandfather, Arthur Morris, I said. Gideon's face softened by a fraction. Arthur was a good boilermaker, best in the state. You're his granddaughter? Yes. He walked over to his desk, pulled out 2 $50 bills, and slammed them onto the metal table. There is a room for rent above the bakery down the street. It's warm, it's dry, and the baker is a friend of mine. You show up here tomorrow at 7 in the morning. If you're late by 1 minute, don't bother coming back. I lived in that tiny room above the bakery for 3 years. It smelled of yeast and warm flour, and it was the safest place I had ever known. I worked 60 hours a week for Gideon, learning everything he had to teach. I learned how to TIG weld exotic alloys, how to operate massive hydraulic press brakes, how to estimate industrial contracts, and how to negotiate with tight-fisted developers who thought they could bully a young woman in a hard hat. At 25, I bought my first service truck. At 28, when Gideon decided to retire to Arizona, he didn't sell the business to a conglomerate. He sold the equipment and the client list to me for a fraction of its value, structured over a 10-year payment plan that I paid off in 4. I renamed the business Vance Structural and Ornamental Iron. I didn't do it to honor my family. I did it to reclaim the name. I wanted the name Vance to stand for heavy steel, unbreakable welds, and absolute reliability, rather than Beatrice's petty lies and Clara's cheap drama. 2 years ago, I purchased a 6-acre commercial property outside the town of Oak Haven. It had an old stone farmhouse that had been built in the late 1800s, a massive 3-bay workshop with 20-foot ceilings, and a secure yard where I could park my 4 service vans and store tons of structural steel. The first thing I did was install a heavy-duty, double-layered security fence around the entire perimeter. I didn't do it out of paranoia. I did it because my yard held over $200,000 worth of specialized machinery, copper wire, and welding equipment. I contracted with a commercial security firm managed by a woman named Sarah Higgins, a former military police officer who didn't tolerate nonsense. Part of our security protocol included 2 patrol handlers who walked the property lines with trained guard dogs at night. I felt no fear in that house. I had earned every single stone of the foundation. I had replaced the roof, updated the plumbing, and fabricated the gorgeous custom-designed steel staircase that led to the 2nd floor. It was a monument to 14 years of blistered hands, sleepless nights, and absolute determination. And then, Beatrice found out where I lived. It wasn't hard for her to track me down. My company vans had our logo and address printed on the side, and we had recently completed a massive, highly publicized restoration of the historic courthouse downtown. Which brings us back to that Tuesday morning at the gate. I stood by my kitchen window, watching the monitor as the sheriff's deputy cruiser pulled up behind the orange moving truck. I had called the non-emergency dispatch line and reported an unauthorized vehicle blocking a commercial driveway. The deputy, a burly man named Miller who knew me from the courthouse project, stepped out of his car and walked toward the moving truck. Todd immediately climbed down from the cab, waving his arms and shouting, pointing toward my gate. I walked out of my front door, down the gravel path, and stood 5 feet behind the steel bars of my gate. "Is there a problem here, deputy?" I asked through the speaker grill. "Morgan!" Beatrice screamed, running toward the bars, her hands grasping the steel. "Tell this man to go away. Tell him we are your family. He is threatening to ticket Todd." Deputy Miller looked at me. "Morgan, do you know these folks?" "The older woman is my biological mother," I said, my voice steady and clear. "The younger woman is my sister, and the man is her husband. They do not have permission to be on this property. They arrived unannounced with a moving truck, and they are obstructing my business entrance." "Morgan!" Clara shrieked, her face turning a bright, angry red. "Stop being an absolute monster. We have 3 kids in that truck. We lost our apartment because the landlord raised the rent, and Todd's business failed. We have nowhere to go. You have a massive house and 6 acres. You are our sister. You have to let us stay." "What business, Clara?" I asked, looking at Todd, who was glaring at me from behind the deputy. "Did Todd start another business that lasted 3 weeks before he spent the capital on video games?" "That's none of your business," Todd yelled, stepping toward the gate. "You think you're some big shot because you play with metal? You owe your mother. She raised you." "She threw me out in the sleet when I was 18 with $400 and 2 garbage bags," I told the deputy, who listened with a neutral, professional expression. "I have a formal no trespass request ready to file. I want them off my property line immediately." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears, but they were the dry, angry tears of a woman who had lost her leverage. "Morgan, please. Have you no Christian charity? Your grandmother would be absolutely disgusted by what you've become." "My grandfather left me his cash box, Beatrice," I said. "He told me to use it to unlock my own door. He never said I had to leave it open for the people who locked me out." Deputy Miller nodded. He turned to Todd and Beatrice. "All right, folks, you heard her. You need to get this truck moved immediately. If you're still blocking this road in 5 minutes, I'm calling a heavy-duty tow truck, and you'll be paying a $400 impound fee. Move it along." Clara screamed an obscenity at me, her voice cracking with a mix of fury and desperation. Todd spat on my gravel driveway before climbing back into the cab. Beatrice stood by the gate for a moment longer, her lip trembling, waiting for the guilt to crack my resolve. It didn't. I watched them climb into the orange truck, the engine roaring to life as Todd shifted gears aggressively, throwing gravel against my fence as he pulled away. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought that even they would understand that a steel gate and a sheriff's deputy meant the conversation was over. But I underestimated the desperate entitlement of people who believe your success is a resource they are naturally entitled to exploit. 3 days later, on Friday evening, I was in my workshop. The sound of the overhead exhaust fan was humming, and I was wearing my welding hood, running a clean TIG bead along the frame of a custom iron gate. Suddenly, the shop door flew open. It was Sarah Higgins, my security supervisor. She wasn't wearing her usual relaxed expression. Her hand was on her radio, and her face was tense. "Morgan, kill the torch," she said, her voice sharp. "We've got an active breach at the south fence line." I flipped up my hood, my heart instantly leaping into my throat. "What?" "2 adults and a male suspect are currently trying to cut through the chain link section near the old rail spur," Sarah said, pulling up her tablet to show me the live feed. "The male has a pair of bolt cutters. They've got a vehicle parked in the brush off the county road." I looked at the screen. It was Todd. He was sweat-drenched, wearing a dirty t-shirt, working a massive pair of orange bolt cutters against the tension wires of my security fence. Behind him stood Clara, holding her youngest child in her arms like a human shield, while Beatrice stood nearby, waving her arms and directing Todd like she was supervising a construction site. "They told my patrol handler that you had given them verbal permission to use the old carriage house for storage," Sarah said. "They claim they lost their gate card, and you told them to make their own way in until Monday." "That is a flat-out lie," I said, my teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. "They are trying to force entry. Call the state police. Do not negotiate with them, Sarah. Release the patrol dogs on the interior perimeter." "Already called the troopers," Sarah said, a grim smile playing on her lips. "And the dogs are already on the line. They won't bite unless the suspects cross the threshold, but they are making a lot of noise." On the monitor, I watched the scene unfold. Todd managed to cut through 3 links of the heavy-duty wire before the sound of deep, rhythmic snarling cut through the Ohio night. 2 massive Belgian Malinois, handled by my security team, lunged against the interior chain-link fence, their teeth bared, their barks echoing off the metal siding of my workshop. Todd jumped back so fast, he tripped over his own bolt cutters, sprawling into the weeds. Clara screamed, clutching the child tighter, while Beatrice began shrieking at the security handler, waving her purse as if she could swat the dogs away. "This is private property," the handler shouted over the barking of the dogs. "Step away from the fence immediately. The state police have been dispatched." "We are her family," Beatrice screamed, her face contorted in a mask of absolute fury. "She owns this land. We have a right to be here. Tell these beasts to get away from my grandchildren." "You have 0 rights here, lady," the handler yelled back. "Step back." I grabbed my jacket, walked out of the workshop, and marched down the gravel path toward the south fence line. The cold night air hit my face, clearing away the smell of ozone and hot metal. By the time I reached the fence, the blue and red lights of 2 state trooper cruisers were already bouncing off the trees along the county road. The troopers stepped out of their vehicles, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they approached the gap where Todd had been cutting. "Drop the bolt cutters," one of the troopers shouted, his hand resting on his utility belt. "Step away from the fence." Todd threw his hands up, looking terrified. "Hey, look, this is a family misunderstanding. My sister-in-law owns this place. She told us we could store our stuff here. We were just trying to get the gate open because she wasn't answering her phone." The trooper looked past the cut fence and saw me standing next to Sarah Higgins. "Ma'am, is this your property?" "Yes, officer," I said, my voice carrying over the fence line, clear and cold. "I am Morgan Vance, the owner of Vance Structural Iron. I did not give these people permission to be here. They were formally warned by the county sheriff 3 days ago that they would be arrested for trespassing if they returned." "That's a lie!" Clara screamed, pointing a finger at me through the gap in the wire. "You told Mom we could use the carriage house. You're doing this because you're a bitter, selfish bitch who wants to see my kids freeze in the street." "Clara, shut up," Todd hissed, but it was too late. The trooper turned to Todd. "Sir, you've got a pair of commercial bolt cutters in your hand, and you've cut through 3 feet of private industrial fencing. That's not a family misunderstanding. That's criminal damaging and attempted breaking and entering." "Please, officer," Beatrice stepped forward, her voice dripping with that fraudulent, trembling, sweet mother tone. "My daughter Morgan is very emotional. She has some mental health struggles and she gets confused. We are just trying to help her. She doesn't realize what she's doing." I nearly laughed out loud. It was the exact same tactic she had used when I was 15, telling the school guidance counselor that my constant lies about Clara stealing my savings were just a symptom of my difficult personality. "I am completely lucid, Beatrice," I said, "and the 16 security cameras surrounding this property have recorded every single second of Todd cutting that fence, with you directing him. I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." The second trooper walked over to Todd, grabbed his arms, and pulled them behind his back, the metallic click of handcuffs echoing through the quiet night. "Todd Miller, you are under arrest for criminal damaging, criminal trespassing, and attempted breaking and entering," the trooper said. "Morgan!" Beatrice screamed, her voice reaching a pitch I had never heard before, a mixture of raw panic and absolute hatred. "Look what you are doing to your sister's family. You are a monster. You are no daughter of mine." "You're right, Beatrice," I said, looking her dead in the eye through the cut wires of my fence. "I stopped being your daughter 14 years ago when you put my life in a trash bag. I'm just the woman who owns the steel you couldn't break." The troopers led Todd away toward the cruiser, his boots dragging in the dirt. Clara was sobbing hysterically now, screaming at the troopers, at the dogs, and at me, while her children watched from the back seat of their rusted SUV, their faces pale and confused. Beatrice stood by the cut fence for a long time, her hands shaking, her expensive wool shawl dirty from the brush. For the first time in her life, she had encountered a wall she couldn't charm, manipulate, or guilt her way through. "We have nowhere to go, Morgan," she whispered, her voice finally sounding old, tired, and defeated. "The motel room we rented is up tomorrow. We have no money left." "You should have thought about that before you bought Todd a gaming console with your rent money," I said. "Now get off my property line before the troopers arrest you as an accessory." She turned and walked slowly toward the SUV, her shoulders slumped, her majestic motherly authority reduced to a sad, shuffling gait in the gravel. The next morning, the repair crew from my company arrived at the south fence line. It took us 45 minutes to weld a new steel reinforcement plate over the cut section of the fence, making it twice as strong as it had been before. The legal fallout was swift and merciless. Todd was charged with criminal damaging and criminal trespass. Because he had a previous record of minor thefts and a suspended driver's license, the county prosecutor didn't offer him a sweet plea deal. He was sentenced to 60 days in the county jail, 300 hours of community service, and ordered to pay my company $3,400 in restitution for the damaged commercial fencing and security fees. Clara received a formal, court-ordered, no trespass injunction. If she ever steps foot within 500 feet of my property or my business offices again, she will be immediately arrested. Beatrice tried to call me from 3 different burner phones over the next month. I didn't block them immediately. Instead, I let them go to voicemail, forwarding the recordings directly to my attorney, who issued a formal cease and desist letter warning her that any further attempts at communication would result in harassment charges. One evening, about a month after the arrest, I was sitting at my grandfather's old wooden table in my kitchen. The house was completely quiet, save for the occasional crackle of the wood-burning stove. I opened the heavy steel cash box Arthur Morris had given me. Inside, beneath the empty envelope that had once held his $450, was an old photograph of him and me standing in his workshop. I was 12 years old, covered in soot, holding a small iron star we had forged together. I touched the rough edges of the iron star in the photo. My family still tells anyone who will listen that I am a cold, heartless bitch who let her sister's children starve while I lived in a mansion. They tell the church members that I turned my back on my own blood because of money. Let them. The truth is, I didn't choose a house over my family. I chose safety over violence. I chose boundaries over manipulation. I chose the life I had built with my own bleeding hands over the people who only remembered my name when they needed a roof over their heads. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't a shouting match. It isn't a dramatic confrontation or a clever scheme to make them suffer. Sometimes the best revenge is simply a locked gate, a clean conscience, and the quiet, beautiful sound of a door that they will never, ever be allowed to open again.